So what is up, everybody? It's Tuesday, so it's time for the Sports Court. I'm Eddie Cox alongside Greg Beatty, and we're back after what was an exciting Super Bowl. I don't think anybody would argue about that, Greg. I know you enjoyed it, even though maybe when you look at it as a whole, you think Rams, Bengals, it doesn't really have that allure that maybe the old, if it was a Brady and a Rodgers or something like that, even though those two quarterbacks were in the NFC. But you get where I'm going. It wasn't one of those types of Super Bowls, not this year. It was Matt Stafford, his first time there after, years and years of playoffless football in Detroit. And then you have Joe Burrow, the up-and-coming and budding superstar with a chance to shock the world and be the guy to do almost the impossible, which would be beating the Rams in that scenario in their home stadium. It went down to the wire, went down to the final drive. I know you guys spent a lot of Monday listening about how the Super Bowl went and recapping the Super Bowl. We're going to give you, our take on it briefly, but we're also going to talk about what's next. What comes next for Matt Stafford, and do the Rams have a chance to repeat? Is Aaron Donald going to retire like he, just dropped that tidbit out of nowhere all of a sudden? Here's a report from the sidelines. Aaron Donald retiring? What? No way.
I don't think he is.
And if he does, I think you can almost take repeat off the board. A lot of people will tell you Aaron Donald may be single-handedly the entire reason why they're even world champions right now as we speak. But that's not all we're going to talk about. There was a big trade in the NBA, a player a lot of you fans are familiar with, James Harden, is on the move once again. He has reunited with Daryl Morey and the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll talk about that soap opera that is the National Basketball Association. As well as we're going to take a look close to home as the Houston Texans have hired a new head coach in Lovie Smith. The Dallas Cowboys are going to stick with Mike McCarthy. As you can see, Greg and I are clad in our team colors and team unit.
Capping off the NFL season in style.
But we're going to talk about what is going to come next for these two teams, and is there hope? I think you could even if you look at the Cowboys and how good they were last year, you could almost argue, which team has more hope going into this season? Could it be the Texans finally looking like they may be somewhat on the right track and then being able to move on, or maybe move on with Deshaun Watson? Who knows what's going to happen? Nothing would surprise me now. And the Cowboys, even though they were so good last year, do they feel like they're putting their best foot forward with Mike McCarthy as head coach? Or should it be the one lurking in the wings and who's going to be on the set? I think it's going to be NBC and Sean Payton. Who knows there? Did the Cowboys and Jerry Jones make the right decision? I know Greg's going to let you guys know what he thinks about it. But first, let's talk about that Super Bowl, Greg, and what stood out to you. Aside from the halftime show, we got to talk about it. There's been a battle between the likes of you and I, Greg, the Gen X and millennials, particularly the elder millennials, that of which I belong to. There's been an argument, who was the halftime show for? Was it for Gen X like you, Greg, or was it for the millennials and us, the guys who grew up listening to, the Chronic, 2002, Eminem, 50 Cent? I was in high school and in the club when that single dropped. I was in the 10th grade.
Right. Well, check it out. It's like this.
There's an argument going on. I don't know
That's
if
a good
you're
question,
aware.
Eddie.
Who is it for? Was it more for you? Was it more for me? Or was it for
I think both. I think both in the sense that if you look at it right now, a great halftime show, by the way. And Eddie, once again, you're listening to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty alongside the wonderful Eddie Cox. And the thing about it is, Eddie, I think for you all, that's why they put Kendrick Lamar there. And, of course, for us, it sparked a lot of nostalgia. Now, those are my guys, Dr. Dre, Snoop, and all those guys, that whole Death Row camp. I'm a music lover. And, of course, rap a lot here in town. But Dr. Dre, who will soon be 57, I think as early as tomorrow, the greatest to ever do it as far as production-wise, producer-wise. Everything Dr. Dre touches turns to platinum. Not gold, but platinum. If you look at the guys he had on stage, he discovered Snoop Dogg. He discovered Eminem. He discovered 50 Cent, who was a surprise in the club. hanging off the ceiling like he did in the video. Put on a few LBs, but when you're making that kind of money, hey, why not, man?
Hey, I gotta
50
be
is doing
honest
this
with you,
thing.
Greg. I thought 50 was gonna pass out. I was like, man, brother, hang in there
Hey,
because
at
he
first
looked
I
like
thought-
he was struggling.
At first, I thought 50 had on a bulletproof vest or something. I was like, man, 50 is kind of chunky right there. But hey, man, the dude is doing some amazing things. Big time executive producer on a number of shows. So I cannot hate on 50. I mean, 17 years ago was when he did that video in the club. I mean, hey, the guy's
I'm
put
not
on a few
hating on him either.
LBs.
He
No
held
big
in there.
deal.
I could tell that the blood was rushing to his head.
Yeah.
He was starting to go.
Well, you know what?
Just in time,
Snoop
he was
is
able to
50.
get down.
Right, Snoop is 50. So to answer your question, it definitely sparks some nostalgia for guys my age and guys who really know about the Dr. Dre era. And I think they put it down. I mean, everything was choreographed well put together, well produced. And what it does now, you have Kendrick Lamar. That's to bring in a lot of the younger fans who didn't know a lot about Dr. Dre and those guys, and then bam, and then you hit them with Dr. Dre and that crew. But I thought it was a great halftime show. Mary J. Blige did her thing. Of course, Mary J., anytime you have Mary J., even though it's a halftime show, anytime you have Mary J. in the building, she's going to talk about past relationships, and whatever song she's going to sing is going to be something to that effect
That was
about
a
how she's
dramatic
been spurned
performance
or
by her.
anything.
I didn't know how I felt about that. I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, she did her thing.
Low riders, all
Eminem
that.
was awesome.
I mean, it
I thought
was.
that
Low
great.
riders.
Is there any better entertainer than Snoop Dogg? I mean, just when he comes out, sea walking, man, everybody
Sea
just
walking.
loses it.
Even
There's
though I
just
heard
something
some people
about
saying
guy.
that was that seawalk wasn't the best seawalk in the world. I heard
No,
some
but
people
the
making
thing
jokes
it is,
about
he
that.
realized now at 50, he don't have to put all that effort into it anymore. He just got to show up and do his thing. And
Oh,
we're
they
gonna
did their
love
thing, man.
Everything that
They
Snoop
did their
touches
thing.
turns to gold. We're gonna love everything that he does. And the halftime show surely was one of those.
And then if
things
you think
as
about it,
the review is it was the best ever. That's what I'm hearing.
but
from
I'll be
almost
honest.
everybody.
I'll be honest, Eddie.
Here
Now
we
to
go,
be
'cause
honest with
last
you,
year, last year was a lot of talk about how good last year's was. With
Right.
The weekend and him, the entertainment level of the show that he put on with the different lights and all that. This year was more about who was on stage rather than what.
because
they
you had
did.
some legends in the game. You had some legends in the game. And the thing about it, you have 70,000 fans that you have to excite. I mean, it's like a concert. And at first, to be honest with you, I think I was probably one of the only ones that was like, it's just okay. And those are my guys. You know that. Those are my guys. But the more I thought about it and the more I watched it, I actually went back and replayed it. I mean, it was a great show. And there's only so much you can do during a halftime show. But they had everything on display. Low riders, like you say, sea walking. And they played a lot of songs. California
Tupac.
Love.
Everything except
I mean,
Tupac.
the next
There
episode, everything except
Listen,
Tupac.
man, let me tell you something. All the radio listening, I had to work Sunday morning, so I was in at work. I was listening to the radio. I was catching a few different podcasts, some on the internet, some on my favorite local radio stations. But there were rumors, and you could also lay a bet, prop bet. Was there going to be a hologram of Tupac during the halftime show? So, man, you bet I was geared
Someone
up.
actually texted me that.
I
thought it
waiting to
would
see.
be.
And whenever they started to play California Love, I was like, here it comes. This is it. This
I
is
did
where
too.
we're going to
I
get
did
it.
too.
And
I
then
did
it
too.
didn't happen. And that was just a big hoax or a big rumor that was out there. But, man, hey, I think that would have been amazing if they would have
It would have
or
been.
figured out a way to do that and make it look real and have it be authentic.
Absolutely.
Man, that would have been.
With
that would have been
today's
the cherry on top.
technology-
That'll put it over. I don't think there would have been any way to top that.
Hey, well, you look at it too. Evan McPherson, the kicker for the Cincinnati Bengals, he even snuck out during halftime. He was superb during the playoffs. I don't think the guy missed a field goal. He even snuck out to watch these guys perform. And again, 70,000 people, and it's like a concert. So 70,000 people that you have to engage 70,000 people, keep them all excited, and they definitely did that. I thought Jay-Z was going to get out there and do some kind of performance. I actually thought that was going to be the surprise, but he stayed in the background right there, just helped put all that together. And kudos to him for making sure that those guys got their props. You remember, it used to be a time where it was an East Coast, West Coast thing going on. Of course, that's long gone by now. Those guys have definitely mended fences. But that was about showing Dr. Dre and that crew some love, being in L.A., their home, and I thought they did a great job of engaging 70,000 people. That's just at the stadium, at SoFi Stadium. That's not including the millions and millions of people that actually watched via television. So great job, great halftime show.
Like
Again,
Bruce
when I
Buffer.
first saw it, I said, it's just okay again. But when I went back and watched it and really thought about, hey, there's only so much that you can do in that period of time. And when I watch it again, I say, okay, that was nice. And if you think back to 2014 when Prince did his thing at the Superdome, and then you can go back to Beyonce, there's been some great Super Bowl performances, of course, but I think that one was the best. I really do think that one was the best.
Okay, now to the game itself. Who stole the show for you, Greg? Was it Aaron Donald? Do you think they were right in giving the MVP to Cooper Kupp? Should have been Matthew Stafford? Should it have been Donald? Like, who stole the show for you? What was the biggest surprise? Or who do you think should have been Super Bowl MVP? Let's just put it that way.
Okay, who do I think should have been Super Bowl MVP? I would say Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp should have shared the MVP, in my opinion.
You fence-riding son of a gun.
Well, I mean, I really think they should have shared it. I really think they should have shared it because I think Aaron Donald deserved a piece of that MVP because what he was able to do as far as dominating on the defensive side of the ball. And Cooper Kupp, I mean, look at what he did. That was a legendary type drive. He scored 2 touchdowns, and what he was able to do, he caught 8 passes for 92 yards. So I think it should have been co-MVPs. That's how I honestly feel. Now, the thing about it, Cooper Kupp, I think he benefited. Now, I still say you should not have let Cooper Kupp beat you on that last drive if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And, of course, we can go back and talk about the game itself. And I thought Cincinnati blew a golden opportunity. The refs at the end of the game, they definitely – it almost seemed like that – I'm not going to say they gave the Rams the game because that was an epic drive. Now, Matthew Stafford, he threw 2 touchdowns, also threw 2 interceptions as well. But Cooper Kupp, what he was able to do when they would have, I mean, in that zone where he was able to find his footwork and the way he's able to maneuver. I mean, Cooper Kupp is the type of guy, you saw what he was able to do the entire season, Eddie. I'm talking about the guy is a superb wide receiver, maybe the best wide receiver in the game right now. I mean, what the guy can do, he can beat you from outside the numbers. He can run routes as an outside receiver, an inside receiver. He has tremendous footwork. He can beat you man-to-man. He has deceptive speed. He can go get the long ball. He can run intermediate routes. I mean, the guy can do it all. He has great separation ability, even though he's not a true blazer. But the way he can separate and the way he can just utilize his body to separate from defenders and find certain soft areas in the defense, he's always able to do that. He was able to do that on that last drive, even though they had a safety over the top. They thought they were double teaming him, but Matthew Stafford said he took it upon himself. He was like, no, I'm going to go to my guy right here. I haven't been going to him pretty much the whole game for the most part. I'm going to go to the best receiver in the game, and I'm going to live or die with that. And I like the fact that Sean McVay was able to do that, call those plays at the end of the game. And I like the fact that Cooper Kupp was able to get open, and Matthew Stafford was able to find him. But again, I mean, you can't have an MVP in that game without part of that MVP going to Aaron Donald.
Well, I'll tell you what, Aaron Donald did show up at the most important time in the game to slam the door shut on a drive that Cincinnati was hoping would end at the very least with an opportunity for aforementioned McPherson to tie the football game. He hadn't missed all season long. You had to think if he got the opportunity, he wasn't going to miss then. Now, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the officiating in this game was just awful. It was awful. They missed a lot of calls that last drive.
The Jalen Ramsey.
The drive of all, the Jalen Ramsey. That's just one of many that were going both ways, not just on that one in particular. I mean, at the end of the drive, the ticky-tack calls that led to multiple first downs for the Rams inside their own 10-yard line, or inside the Bengals 10, I should say.
Playing at home, they got some home cooking.
I mean, you just got
they got some home cooking.
You gotta mention that whenever you talk about how this game ended, because
absolutely
I thought they let them play through penalties that should have been called all the way up to the very last drive. Then on that last drive, they were calling everything in the book. And eventually, you give an offense like Matthew Stafford and the Rams and what they have, along with Cooper Kupp, you give them that many chances, they're going to capitalize eventually, especially when they got an opportunity to from the one. So
those 3 penalties, Eddie, that you're speaking of, the first one came on a 3rd down from the 8-yard line with 1:47 left. Incomplete pass to Cooper Kupp. a holding call on Logan Wilson that was questionable right there.
You saw the replay. You read
Yes.
that. I think all game
Yes.
long they were letting that call go.
Absolutely.
And in that instance, they did
I think
throw
they
the
were trying to
flag.
make up for the call when T. Higgins came out at the second half, when he started in the second half and caught that 75-yard touchdown. I think they were trying to make up for that, even though they took a while to make up for it. But, of course, the Rams are playing at home. They're in Hollywood. You knew at some point – I thought Cincinnati, they had a lot of golden opportunities to really break that game open. Not so much break the game open, but really extend that lead when they were up 20-13. And, of course, they probably shouldn't have been up 20-13 because, of course, Jalen Ramsey, that was an interference. That was an offensive interference on T. Higgins. So I think that was, some of that was make up for that. But you had that call. Then the second one, on the next play, Stafford tossed a 4-yard touchdown to Kupp, which was nullified by offsetting penalties, unnecessary roughness by Von Bell on Cooper Kupp in the end zone. But, I mean, come on, what is the guy supposed to do? This is football. I don't see how that was unnecessary roughness. I really don't. Now, was it helmet to helmet? I didn't see helmet to helmet.
I don't think so.
I mean, the guy just laid a hit on him. He was trying to make sure that in case Cooper Kupp caught the ball, he was dislodging the football. That's what you call football. So a lot of these referees right now, they're too flag happy in situations like that. And then on the incomplete pass to Kupp, Eli Apple was called for a PI that put the ball on the 1-yard line. Right then, you knew that was game over. But then, of course, you had Cincinnati getting the ball back with 1:25 left in the game, Eddie. 1:25. Now, the whole entire game, the Rams could not run the football against the Bengals defense. Again, that's why I say, man, what's meant to happen is going to happen. Because I thought Cincinnati had that game. I really thought Cincinnati had that game. And I didn't have a dog in that fight. You see who I represent. I represent the Cowboys. And I wouldn't have mind seeing a lot of my friends and ex-teammates from Cincinnati with my Ohio ties. I wouldn't have mind seeing the Bengals and Burrow get it done. But at the same time, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, Odell Beckham, who we're going to talk about in a second, who I think if Odell Beckham would have stayed healthy, ACL injury, I think if he would have stayed healthy, he probably would have been in the running for the MVP the way he started out that ball game. But 1:25 left to play when the Bengals got the ball back, and they failed to get 1 yard on 3 plays from the 49-yard line. On that last play, where Aaron Donald, who was wrecking shop. Now, when the Bengals went up 20-13, that's when the Rams defense, that very ferocious defense of theirs, fast defense, Von Miller, all those guys started stepping up. I mean, they had like 4 sacks in like 11 plays, so they really turned up the pressure. But especially on this last drive, especially on the 4th and 1, which never should have came down to the 4th and 1, because the running back Perrine, first of all, why is Mixon not in the game right there running the football? I don't understand that. And then Perrine, you got to get that yard, but that shows you
if Mixon's in there,
that shows you
they're
Aaron
respecting
Donald.
the run more. I think by putting Perrine in there, they've been using him in third down situations the entire game. I think by having him in there, they legitimately thought, I think they even mentioned this, as Zach Taylor mentioned this in the postgame, that they could steal a first down there. When you've got a quarterback like Joe Burrow and you know he's a guy who cooks, you know, when he's cooking, he's getting in a rhythm, he's getting rid of the ball quickly, that's when he's really having success. Mm-hmm. And I feel like going to the run there, even if you do get the first down, you still break his rhythm. A guy like Joe Burrow, you got to let him just go. And in that moment between him and Chase, you felt like with that 17-yard completion to start things off, you felt like they were off on the right foot, and they were going to get down there and at least get an opportunity to have a field goal attempt. But they weren't able to do that, and I do put it on going to that running play. It completely disrupted the entire rhythm of Joe Burrow and that offense, and it gave a perfect opportunity for the Rams and Aaron Donald to put Cincinnati in a situation where they knew they weren't going to run the football on 4th and 1, and Aaron Donald could be unleashed.
And see,
I think they forgot that he was their number one threat because he was able to just go, unimpeded almost to the quarterback and end the Super Bowl on that one play right then and there.
Right, and see, that's what Aaron Donald does. I mean, the guy is a special talent. But I thought on that 4th down play, and even plays before that, when you saw the Rams getting pressure on Joe Burrow, I thought maybe at least on that 4th down, maybe a rollout for 4th and 1, I mean, if you know Aaron Donald is going to be coming like that, I mean, get Joe Burrow out of the pocket. Quit having him standing up there like a statue. Get him out the pocket, let him roll out, and find someone for 1 yard. You have him sitting back there with the best defensive player probably of all time. I mean, coming to impede his progress. That's what happens. Man, if you look at Aaron Donald, I mean, look at what he does. 6 foot tall, Eddie. 6 foot tall, 280 pounds. But he throws guys around like they're a rag doll, man. He throws them around like they're a rag doll. The guy has tremendous leverage, has tremendous strength, and has tremendous quickness. I mean, his leverage, he's able to get under the pads of those offensive linemen, and he's able to wiggle his way and do anything he wants to get to the quarterback. And, of course, his strength, he bullies offensive linemen like it's nothing. Then, of course, his quickness to go along with his incredible strength and power he uses to really beat his opponent. I mean, the guy is just special. And you saw when they – on that play where he pushed Joe Burrow out of bounds, on that play, you saw that woke him up. That was like, he was like, okay. When they pushed him out of bounds and everybody came over there from the Bengals and they grabbed his face mask and did all those things, I said, uh-oh, game on now. You just woke up a sleeping giant right there. Not that he was sleeping, but he really turned it up a notch after that. I mean, Aaron Donald is a man playing with boys. But I think he should have shared a piece of that MVP with Cooper Kupp. I honestly don't feel that Cooper Kupp should have won that MVP outright by himself, because Aaron Donald is what makes that team go. And after that 20-13 deficit, his energy alone on the defensive side of the ball got everyone else involved, and he really ramped his play up, and that just invigorated his entire team, his teammates, and they felt that they were going to be able to overcome that deficit because of the stellar play of Aaron Donald. And again, if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, on that 4th and 1, on that 3rd and 1, when he stopped P. Ryan on that play, I mean, they're going to go down and tie that ball game, and who knows, probably win it. So I'm surprised that he didn't at least share that with Cooper Kupp. But two tremendous players. And, man, you have to feel for Odell Beckham. I mean, the guy, he looked healthy. He looked very engaged. He was very elated after the game. You know he was. But you can tell how dejected he was during the game when he was back on the sideline. For one, not knowing if he was going to get that Super Bowl ring because they were down for a while in the second half, and it looked like the Rams couldn't do, which they couldn't. They couldn't do anything in the run game to get any kind of run game going with Cam Akers or anybody to get anything going against that Cincinnati front. The Bengals played a great game. Don't get it twisted. The Bengals played a great game, and I thought they let one get away. But Odell, you saw him on the sideline, Eddie, and you saw how dejected he was. And I think a lot of that had to do with, okay, I'm not going to get a ring, and I wish I could be there to help. But the fact that he has to go through another year, he knew right when it happened that was an ACL. I don't think he had to wait on the MRI whatsoever. He knew when it happened, when he buckled, that was another year-long injury. He came back in 6 or 7 months last time. But the fact that he has to go through this process all again as far as the rehab and things like that, another major surgery on the same knee, who knows if he's going to come back and be the same. Now, again, I mean, he's in a contract year as well, so I think he was feeling all that. But I think once the game finally ended, I think he was able to say, well, at least I'm going to get that Super Bowl under my belt.
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl champion, and he was a big part of why they were able to get there and a big part of why they were able to win that game, even though he wasn't there throughout the entire game. You know, when he was in there, I think he was a problem for the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, that between trying to guard him and Cooper Kupp, it was clear, like it had been in playoff games before, that the Rams are not afraid to go to Odell Beckham Jr. and to exploit his capabilities by feeding him the football when you're paying too much attention to Cooper Kupp. And how could you not, you know, as explosive and as good of a receiver as he is. But you know, then he went out of the game, and clearly it hurt their offense. And as we've seen in prior playoff games, Cincinnati came out in the second half with an excellent game plan. They adjusted to what they were going to do on offense, knowing now that their second fiddle was not as talented as Odell Beckham Jr. It's a Van Jefferson, a guy who you can't let that guy get behind you, and they did a good job of keeping him in front. And you could tell they were taking their shots towards Van in the third quarter, trying to get something going with that, but it just wasn't happening. You knew it was going to be Cooper Kupp or nobody else. So
they got
Henderson involved as well.
Yes, they did.
I agree. In Cincinnati, they were pulling out all the stops. You felt like they had the Rams right where they wanted them. The halfback pass Joe Mixon in the back of the end zone to who caught that pass? Was it T. Higgins?
T. Higgins.
In the back of the end zone. And T. Higgins was having a Super Bowl MVP type of game, at that point. It just felt like everything was going the Bengals' way. And then on that final drive, things fall apart. It's disappointing, but when you look at it as a whole, you have to think, as I told a good friend of mine, Matt Stafford, if he's going to win it, that was the time. We're not sure if they're going to be able to make it back next season. He's been doing this a long time. He ain't getting any younger. They went all in for this particular reason right here.
Absolutely.
It was Matt Stafford's time to win a championship. And I think a lot of people feel like, as young as Joe Burrow is and the way he's shown to just play with ice water in his veins in some of the biggest games of the year, you feel like if that defense can still find a way to stay as good as they are and keep putting out solid defense year after year, that they're going to be back and Joe's going to have another opportunity to win a Super Bowl, especially if they end up being the kryptonite for the Chiefs over there in Kansas City, because so far, at least this year, that
the opening favorites in Vegas, right? And I still say the Chiefs are the favorite to come out of the AFC next season. Now, and that's the thing with Cincinnati, why this is so disappointing. Even though a great job by them, a team that won 4 games last season, and this season right here, they make it, this past season that just ended, obviously. They make it to the Super Bowl. And again, like you're saying, a young team, Jamar Chase, who had a good game. I thought on that, it was a crucial third down that Joe Burrow uncharacteristically missed to Jamar Chase, where he actually had Jalen Ramsey beat. That would have kept the drive alive, but he underthrew Jamar Chase right there. That halted the drive. I thought that was huge. But that's football. Things happen. But I think with Cincinnati, the reason I say that was a golden opportunity lost because I thought they had that game. Now, granted, it's not surprising that Matthew Stafford and the Rams, with all that star power that they have over there, it's not surprising that they were able to mount a comeback. Again, with Aaron Donald, that defense, I can go on and on. Sean McVay playing at home. So at the same time, that's not surprising as well. That's why I said I thought Cincinnati, when they had their chances to extend that lead and they didn't do it, I knew that it was probably going to come down to a last drive, and Matthew Stafford definitely delivered in that situation. But Cincinnati, that's the thing. Who knows if they're going to get back? I harken back to a guy like Dan Marino when they had the Marx brothers back in the day, a team that I liked a whole lot. Then they went and played the 49ers in the Super Bowl in 84, the 84 season, and Dan Marino threw for a gazillion amount of yards. Mark Clayton, Mark Duper, and they were doing their thing and got to the Super Bowl, and the 49ers ran roughshod over those guys, and they never got back. Miami never got back. Now, granted, Miami didn't have a complete team. Their team was mostly predicated on Dan Marino, the Marx brothers, and that's it. They didn't have a running game, and the defense wasn't spectacular. But that's the thing. With all these teams in the AFC, your team, the Buffalo Bills, who you picked this past season, they're only going to get better. Well, not your team. Your team is the Texans, obviously. But you have Josh Allen. And then you have a team like the Ravens, who's going to get J.K. Dobbins back. That's going to bolster their run game. Lamar Jackson is only going to get better. Of course, at some point, he wants to go to a Super Bowl, and I think they have the horses to do that on both sides of the ball. If they can stay healthy, Lamar Jackson is only going to improve and get better. The Chiefs are still going to be the Chiefs. So you look at Patrick Mahomes and those guys, they're still going to be in the mix. Of course, Cincinnati, a very young team, they're still going to be there, of course. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as Cincinnati thinks to get back. And that was a golden opportunity right there to seize the moment right there. And, of course, with some help from the refs, but Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald put their stamp down on that game and made sure that the Cincinnati Bengals were not going to be the underdog that got that Super Bowl victory this past Sunday. So
hey,
it's going to be tough, man.
It certainly won't be easy for them to get back. And you look at you could look at other quarterbacks. Look at how difficult it is for Aaron Rodgers to get back to the Super Bowl, to have an opportunity to win another one. It's one of those things that was almost a given you to say, hey, yeah, that's going to happen. But you see how difficult it is. And you mentioned all the young quarterbacks in the AFC. Without a doubt, it's going to be difficult. You just feel like when you have a guy like Joe Burrow as your quarterback every year, you're going to be in the conversation.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's similar to where the Texans were with Deshaun Watson when they had him, with the Bill O'Brien days when they were making it to the playoffs. They were right there on the cusp. You felt like, it's always a long shot with the Texans, but it wouldn't surprise you if they won some games and ended up playing in an AFC Championship or a Super Bowl because they had Deshaun Watson. And I feel like Joe Burrow is, he's that kind of guy. So if I had to bet, I would bet that he would at least get back to one. Will he win it? I don't know, but I would say he was more than likely to get back to a Super Bowl.
I would agree with that.
And the AFC North alone, when you look at the AFC North, to me, that's probably one of the most interesting divisions in football when you look at it right now, because you have to believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers, they found a way to make it to the playoffs somehow. On the dead arm of Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know how they made it, but they were able to backdoor their way into the playoffs. You look at Baltimore and what they are if they get J.K. Dobbins back, and if their defense ends up playing a little bit better than they did this year, and that offense takes another step forward, how good they could be. We already know Cincinnati. We've talked about them at length. And then Cleveland, you feel like maybe they're a Deshaun Watson trade or an Aaron Rodgers or bringing Tom Brady out of retirement or some other crazy move at the quarterback position. They're that away from being a really good football team, if not a Super Bowl contender. They may very well be what the Bucs were before they got Brady. If you take Baker Mayfield out and you plug in, somebody who can freaking play.
Like you said, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
they get Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun, or like if an Aaron Rodgers works his way out of Green Bay, I don't think that's going to happen. But there's talk out there. There's talk that Brady may figure out a way to open his options up. I mean, how crazy would that be?
He wants to play in San Francisco,
if Brady could be the one guy to go to the Cleveland Browns and to bring a championship to Cleveland after so many years of futility.
He's played in cold weather.
That's an interesting there's so many directions, so many different ways that division can shake out over the next 5 to 10 years. Pittsburgh. Mentioning them, they're a quarterback away too. They've got really good young pieces on the defense with Fitzpatrick and T.J. Watt, and then on offense, young receivers in Claypool, young tight end Fairmouth. They got to do some retooling on the offensive line, but they had a good run. They've shown in the past they know what they're doing building an offensive line. So then you get the quarterback in there, whoever that may be. If they get that guy in there, all of a sudden Pittsburgh becomes a threat. I mean, that could be the AFC North could easily end up being the best division in football for the next 5 years if some things shake out those teams' way. So you're absolutely right. Cincinnati is going to have it tough, but there's Joe Burrow has made me a believer. He has constantly, time and time again, exceeded the expectations of what I thought he was capable of and what I thought he could do, and just the way he performed, even after taking a brutal sack that looked like it almost snapped his leg, almost snapped his foot off. It makes me wonder in the long term, as we get in 3, 4, 5 seasons into this, can Joe Burrow stay healthy and, 100% of the time and be playing for the Bengals? Or is he going to be like a guy like, we've been correlating him with Deshaun Watson a lot this podcast so far. We've been talking about it this show. Watson was a guy, he's going to miss a season here and there because he's going to tear an ACL. He's always going to come back. But because he gets hit so much, because he extends the play so much, and we've seen Joe Burrow do these same kinds of things, is it going to end up costing him? We've already seen him lose one season to the ACL. Cincinnati, are they going to be able to keep him healthy? And right now, I think that's their number one priority in the offseason.
Absolutely. Getting some offensive line help. And they have a lot of room. They have a lot of cap space. So they can definitely make some moves, and they can definitely get them some offensive linemen. But, of course, in the draft, that's their number one priority, getting Joe Burrow some protection on that offensive line. And then I think the sky's the limit for Cincinnati. Again, with that young core, Joe Mixon at running back, defense playing well. And I like the fact that Zach Taylor, it was uncharacteristic. Those penalties at the end of the game, now they, I think, were the second least penalized team in the NFL. And that's what I was noticing during the game. I'm very, very impressed with how disciplined Cincinnati is to be a young team. And great job by Zach Taylor. Again, that last possession, things got away from them. Maybe a couple calls, maybe shouldn't have went against them. And then again, the T. Higgins situation on that 75-yard touchdown catch, maybe that should have been that definitely should have been a penalty on T. Higgins. But I was surprised on how disciplined they were as a football team to be such a young team. Of course, the Los Angeles Rams, they put all their chips to the middle of the table, and they actually accomplished what they set out to do because they gutted their draft picks, and they're not going to have any first-round draft picks no time soon. I think, 2024, Eddie, if I'm not mistaken. But, hey, I'll tell you like this. They did what they set out to do. So it's all worth it. They went and got Von Miller. Of course, they went and got Matthew Stafford, and I'm happy for Matthew Stafford, right here from Highland Park, Texas. I mean, the guy, he's always been a guy that's been very, very talented, and I've always admired his toughness when he played in Detroit and the way he was able to fight through some of those tough losing seasons with the Detroit Lions. But his talent has never been a question. The question I had was, can he lead a team, and what are his intangibles? And he showed that his teammates love playing for him. He showed he had those intangibles. If you put the right pieces around him, the right coaching staff around him, and of course he can make every throw in the book. And on that last drive, he just trusted the best receiver in the game in Cooper Kupp. He just trusted him, and no matter who they put on him and Sean McVay said, we're going to live or die with Cooper Kupp. And again, what can you say about Cooper Kupp, man? The guy, I mean, I've grown to really admire him as a wide receiver. Being a former wide receiver myself, I mean, the guy seems like he doesn't drop anything that's in his vicinity. Again, he can play on the outside, he can play on the inside, he can run any route on the route tree. He's always finding separation from the defensive back. He has strong hands, he catches the football, great run after the catch, and this is coming off an ACL injury a couple years ago. So, and he's so reliable as a wide receiver. He's dynamic as a wide receiver. Again, I hate that for Odell. Odell started out the game great. He's going to have to rehab again for an entire offseason, get that knee back right. But I think it obviously makes it that much better, the fact that he's able to capture that Super Bowl ring. Now he can just concentrate on getting that knee healthy. But he's had some individual accolades. Now he has those team accolades. You can say the same thing for Aaron Donald. And I don't think Aaron Donald's going to retire.
No way.
He's not going to retire. I mean, the guy is that good. He's only 29 years old. He'll be 30 next season. But the way he plays, I mean, he hasn't had any drop off.
You know why I think he's not going to retire? I think because legitimately, you talk about it, he's not even 30 yet. He hasn't had a lot of problems with injuries. You think about J.J. Watt and, you know, the amount of injuries that he went through and how that may have hindered him from reaching the goal that I thought for sure he would be able to get, and that would be 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. I think injuries derailed the opportunity of that, and now J.J. Watt, you know, he's on the downside of his career.
Absolutely.
Aaron Donald, still under 30, doesn't have those injury concerns. He doesn't seem like a player that plays in a way to where he's going to end up getting injured. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to say he's got another 3-4 year window where if he chooses to play, he could perform at a level high enough to win Defensive Player of the Year, become the only player, you know, all time to have 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and I think that would automatically cement him as a lock for first ballot Hall of Famer if he isn't already.
He is already, in my opinion. 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, Super Bowl champion. He's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. The only other guys that I can think of that's more dominant on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line, of course, just on the defensive side of the ball, that dominant is, of course, Deion Sanders, even though he was in the secondary, and, of course, Reggie White, Bruce Smith, and then you had Lawrence Taylor. I mean, and then and of course, J.J. Watt. But those are the guys right there that's been dominant, and Aaron Donald is definitely a dominant player. I mean, the guy is special. Like I said, his leverage, his quickness, his strength. I mean, the way this guy just throws people around at his size, it's amazing. And what he was able to do in that Super Bowl to make sure that this team was able to get that Super Bowl win is nothing short of amazing. So really looking forward to next season. As far as my Cowboys are concerned, really don't have too much to say about the Cowboys before I get into
No, come on. You got something to say about the Cowboys.
Nah, I really don't. I mean, other than the fact that
do they have a chance? Do they really have a chance to? I mean, okay, I always say have a chance, and of course you say yes because they do. Everybody has a chance, for crying out loud. But do you really believe they're going to get it done with Mike McCarthy at the helm? And by get it done, I mean get to and win the Super Bowl, because with Cowboys fans, you have to feel like if you're not doing that, then you're not giving not giving these Cowboys fans what they want. And and I know a lot of people that are part of that fan base. You included, Greg, and that is the one thing I have to say whenever you see these feuds going on between, you know, Cowboys fans and the fans of other teams, it's constantly being, pounded into the Cowboys' head, hey, those 90s days are long gone.
I know, right?
And so
that's why I at least wanted the Cowboys to win a playoff game.
Right. If they start winning some playoff games, get back there, that'll kind of ease some of that. But especially if they find a way to win a Super Bowl, I know that would quash all of that.
Well, of course, that's definitely my team, and I'm definitely going to ride or die with the Cowboys. And do they have a chance? Absolutely, because they're that talented. Now,
in spite of Mike McCarthy.
In spite of Mike McCarthy. Now, of course, a lot of his bonehead decisions, a lot of his clock management decisions, and some of the things he does. But I will say this. For a vast majority of the season, I was complimenting him on how good of a job he was doing, even though he doesn't call plays, or he didn't last year, and he doesn't call the defensive plays either. But you have Dan Quinn, who came over there and changed the culture on the defensive side of the ball. But Mike McCarthy, I mean, obviously he's going to be the coach next year, so we shall see what happens. Hopefully he learns from some of his mistakes this past season, and we'll see what happens. But they definitely have to establish the run more. You have Zeke, you have Pollard. I think Pollard needs to play more. He has to play more of a role in the offense, whether it be running the football and catching the ball out of the backfield. I think Zeke can come in healthy and still give you. He's not going to be the Ezekiel
time to draft that replacement. Let's be honest.
Well, Pollard. Well,
I like Pollard, and but I still like Pollard as a second guy. Yeah, I like him as a second guy.
And I still like Zeke, but here's the thing, too, with that, before we move on, because I want to get your take on the Texans, of course. Zeke, of course, he's not the Zeke from 3, 4, 5 years ago. We all know that. But I still think he can be a very effective running back if you give him the football and let him get going. And the offensive line has some kind of continuity. They have to keep those guys together. You have Zach Martin and you have Tyron Smith. They're always in and out of the lineup, but they have to have some kind of continuity on the offensive line. And then as an offensive play caller, Kellen Moore, you have to commit to the running game more and then work the play-action passing game, work your passing game off of the run game. I thought way too many times the Cowboys got away from that this past season.
Well, I think we're going to find out a lot going into this season, because in order for the Cowboys to win, Kellen Moore is going to have to evolve his offense to become a little bit more flexible when it comes to needing to run the football in situations to put teams away, which is something they didn't do very well this year. Now, I think it's important that, Zeke shows up for camp in shape. If he shows up looking like 50 Cent, the Cowboys are going to have a problem, and that's not going to be not going to be good. Yeah, and we're going to find out where if Zeke's still motivated, because I thought he came into this season motivated. It didn't work out well for him, but there were a lot of issues across that offensive line, and they need to do some retooling there. They need to get younger. They need to draft and bring some guys in there, just like they did before. Focus. They made it they made it a staple in their draft process to draft these offensive linemen. Even if other teams felt like they were reaching, they were going for guys that they knew were going to be stalwarts, and they need to go with that approach in the draft again. You've gotten your quarterback, you've gotten your wide receiver, your speedster in CD Lamb. Now you need to tool that offensive line. You may have hit a home run with a couple of good young tight ends that you've gotten in late rounds or undrafted. Now you need to put some of that draft capital back into the offensive line, because those guys, they've aged, they've gotten old, and the ones that are still sticking around, like you've mentioned, can't stay healthy. So that they have to get younger on the offensive line. If they do that, they can win some games. It makes me wonder if Mike McCarthy knowing in the back of his mind that Jerry Jones really would rather have Sean Payton as his head coach, and is only doing this because Jerry Jones can't publicly be that, cutthroat of an owner, giving Mike McCarthy the reins, them seemingly having success, and then just to cut his legs out from under him. That's not the type of owner Jerry Jones wants to be. But I think in the back of Mike McCarthy's mind, he knows Jerry wishes he could have jumped all over Sean Payton, and that if another team is able to lure Sean Payton out of retirement and make them their head coach, and the Cowboys miss on their opportunity and end up peaking at the same place they did this season, which would be with the first round playoff exit, it'll have a lot of fans wondering. It'll have me wondering, Greg, and I know it'll have you wondering if Jerry Jones made the right call, and if the Cowboys are going to be able to recover in time to really make
Well,
something of
I'm
their
on
core
record
group
saying
of
I wish
players.
Dan Quinn would have gotten the job. I mean,
Yeah, Quinn's a great candidate too, but yeah, what happens whenever both those candidates are gone? Because Quinn narrowly slipped through the cracks this time. I think next year, if the Cowboys defense is just as good or close to as good as they were last season, Quinn's going to get hired somewhere else. Then where do you go from there? Because
Right.
look,
If
what
that
we're going to
would've been-
learn this season, real quick, Greg, to hit on what you touched on just before, I started to go there, was Kellen Moore. We're going to learn now if Kellen Moore is that type of guy, a guy who could be a head coach in this league, or if he's more of now I'm going to mention a head coach here, a Cliff Kingsbury type, where we're finding out now, right now, an offense that can be explosive in spurts, but when it gets crunch time, when it's late in the season, when you have to do certain things, winning teams do really well, like run the football, and you're not able to do it, that's when you lose those big games. We've seen it with Cliff Kingsbury. He's trying to figure out a way to change it in Arizona. If Kellen Moore is that guy, that could be what robs him or gets in the way of him getting a chance to be a head coach in this league. And this season, I think, this upcoming season is going to determine it for Kellen Moore, because you saw he was passed on this year. He had some sniffs, he had some nibbles,
Right.
but he was passed on. And I think it was passed on because people want to see, can he develop an offense that can be more balanced, or is he
Absolutely.
another Cliff?
Well,
And I don't think
well,
teams
you
want to
heard
take a
me.
chance on Cliff.
Hey,
I mean, Arizona did, but
Yeah.
if he
Speaking
were
of
to get
Arizona,
fired,
see what they're
nobody's
doing
going to
with
hire him
Kyler
right
Murray
up. He's
now.
going back to
But here's
college.
the thing
You know
with
that.
Kellen Moore, real quick before we move on. You heard me during the season. I thought he tailed off toward the end of the season as far as the way he coached. Again, I said a lot of times when he should have been passing, he was running the football, and a lot of times when he should have been running. I mean, the guy played under Chris Peterson at Boise State. He has an offensive mind, but I just don't think he's put it all together yet as far as, again, the right balance, like you said, and that's something he's going to have to show this year. Again, you're going to have to stick with the run game more, and you're going to have to use your play action, and all those weapons that you have on the offensive side of the ball, they can't go through those lulls like they did during the latter part of the season. I mean, they just cannot afford to do that, and I put a lot of that on Kellen Moore and the way he was calling those plays. I don't think he was as dynamic as he should have been. I don't think he was as creative as he should have been. I thought a lot of times that offense was way too vanilla, given all the weapons that they have on their side of the ball.
And think about this too: when you're a team that can't run the football as opposed to a team that can, you think back to those days when the Cowboys were dominant in the running game, the early days of Zeke, and when that offensive line was young and exuberant. You think about a word that you correlate with those teams, and it's toughness. And whenever a team can't run the football, when the Cowboys can't run the football in big games, they seem to lack toughness.
I agree.
And you need that toughness to win those games, and it's hurting the Cowboys dearly that they're not able to get that figured out. And to me, it lays right at the feet of Kellen Moore. And I think this is the year, because if he doesn't do it, Jerry Jones may clean house completely, with the coaching staff. Promote somebody that he thinks, maybe if it's Dan Quinn, he might promote Dan Quinn, but they're going to clean house if it doesn't work out this season.
If it wasn't Jerry Jones at the helm, and this being the Dallas Cowboys, he probably would have already lost Dan Quinn and maybe Kellen Moore, even if not to a head coaching position, maybe to someone else as an offensive coordinator. But the fact that it's the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, he was able to keep those guys in-house and give it another go next season. And we'll see if Sean Payton is waiting in the wings. But Mike McCarthy should have something to say about that. Maybe he'll learn. Maybe that'll get him to make more astute decisions at the most opportune times right now. And that would really bode well for him as far as keeping his job. So we'll see what the Cowboys do moving forward. And, hey, again, you're listening to the Sports Court, the show where we keep it 100% of the time. Of course, we're going to talk. Of course, I want to get Eddie's take on the Houston Texans, but we're also going to talk some NBA before we get out of here. And then, of course, next week, we're going to delve into a lot of NBA early and often. It's going to be mostly, even though the NFL season has ended, it's always some NFL news going on. Speaking of NFL news, I mean, of course, Kyler Murray, we don't have time to delve into it today, but of course, Kyler Murray right now is up for a contract extension, I think it is, and now you hear rumblings coming out that he's immature and this and that, which I did see some things on the sideline from Kyler Murray that rubbed me the wrong way when I would watch them lose in the playoffs, and of course, they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins and then J.J. Watt was out, but I did see some things as far as his attitude and the way he carried himself on on the sideline. But like I heard some people say, hey, the timing of all this right now is not so good right now, what the Arizona Cardinals are trying to do. But really don't have time to really delve into all that because I want to talk some NBA, of course, before we get out of here. But what's your take on Lovie Smith signing with your team, the Houston Texans, as head coach?
Well, when you look at the way the process unfolded, it leaves you a little bit bewildered at how they came upon Lovie
Yeah,
Smith.
you think?
However, it makes me wonder, they probably should have, if they were going to hire Lovie Smith this year, they probably should have hired his ass last year before they hired David Culley. I don't know what it was with David Culley. I don't know if they really felt like they just needed a placeholder. Maybe they brought Lovie in, and Lovie was at a point in his coaching career where maybe he felt like he didn't necessarily want to be a head coach anymore. He was comfortable just running his NFL defense and trying to bring back another dominant defense into the league like he had in the past with Peanut Tillman and company in Chicago. But I think that whenever Nick Caserio came calling, I think Lovie Smith realized it could be a really good opportunity for him to take sort of control of what's like been a rudderless ship here in Houston, and especially as far as from the head coaching position between the mishaps of Bill O'Brien and then just the ineptitude of the coaching that has been in place since. He could really rein this franchise in and show, hey, Lovie knows what he's doing, and he still got it. And it's a great opportunity for him.
It is.
I think it also, as a Texans fan, it excites you a little bit to understand and know now there's a head coach in the building who isn't necessarily there to just listen to what Nick Caserio has to say and do what Nick Caserio wants. He has an idea of what winning football looks like and what a winning football team looks like, and he's there to implement that in his way. And I think that brings a lot of people in Houston a little bit of comfort because so far the Patriot way of doing things hasn't exactly yielded the type of success the Texans, fans would like to see. And whether it's been the trading of certain players or the cutting of certain guys, or whether it's been, the hiring of Nick Caserio in general and everything that happened after that, one way or another, Texans want to see what Texan football has been in the past. And when you go back to the Gary Kubiak days and the days of Rick Smith, it was legitimately trying to field the best team you can. It doesn't matter, what these guys do. We're going to be hand in hand. Our general manager is going to find players that fit our scheme. You're going to know what our scheme is, but we're going to be so good at doing it, it doesn't matter that you know what it is. We're going to bring it to, we're going to bring it to battle with us, and we're going to win. You don't have any idea, whether with Bill O'Brien and with Tim Kelly and that type of offense, what their scheme really is. They're supposed to be this game plan style offense, and ultimately it's just a bunch of stuff that ends up looking rather vanilla in the end when it's a bunch of stop routes and a bunch of quick outs.
Right.
It doesn't lead to a lot of big plays, especially when you're developing a young quarterback. And I think bringing in Pep Hamilton, making him the offensive coordinator, letting him take the reins. There were rumors last year that in certain games, whenever Davis Mills was at his best, it was actually Pep Hamilton who was calling the plays and not Tim Kelly. So it brings a lot of excitement when you think about, okay, finally we've got some coaches in here that are going to do something different than what we've seen over the past 5 and 6 years with Bill O'Brien, Romeo Cannell, and then David Culley, all running similarly, essentially the same system on offense.
Right.
And it's a system that has had the Texans at the bottom or near the bottom of the league in rushing year after year after year. And it's not indicative of success, and it's not conducive to success or winning football. You know this, Greg. We just talked about this with the Cowboys.
And you know what, too? Obviously, I'll tell you like this. Lovie Smith benefited from the Brian Flores lawsuit tremendously because, of course, we all know the Texans, they did it like this.
They were more than just flirting with Josh McCown.
Yes,
Let's put it
that's
that way.
what
They weren't
what
just
really
flirting.
wanted.
They were
Now, I don't
full on
know-
having an affair with that cat, and they were getting
a
ready
guy
to
with
hire
no
him.
coaching experience whatsoever.
Now, for all
With
we know, he
let me
could
say
have been
this,
the
Eddie.
next Sean McVay.
Maybe
we
so.
don't know this.
Maybe so, but the timing of everything wasn't
The
conducive for
Texans
that hire.
knew they couldn't hire
And
Josh
they knew they
McCown
couldn't
in
do
that situation.
And I think they probably and they did a tremendous job in changing the narrative. Now,
They
whether
won't
they
admit
wanted
it,
to
but
or
they knew they couldn't hire Brian
they
Flores
knew they couldn't
either.
hire Brian Flores either because he has lawsuits against
That's
the NFL.
right.
But
That's
you have Josh McCown right there. When you already have people complaining about a lot of these guys not getting opportunities that's qualified, but they're saying, oh, well, they're not qualified. You know you can't hire a guy with zero coaching experience. And Eddie, like you said, of course, Josh McCown may turn out to be a great head coach, but zero coaching experience after all this is going down. So the Texans, so what it does at the end of the day, of course, Lovie Smith, he's going to bring a lot of respectability, a lot of years in the NFL. You saw what he was able to do with the Chicago Bears early on in the early 2000s, got them to a Super Bowl. He's coached for other teams as well, coached in college. So he has years and years of experience. He's the type of coach that guys will want to come play for because they respect Lovie Smith. So you can look at it from that perspective as well. So at the end, in the end, the Texans won, and then PR-wise, I mean, say what you will, but the Texans, they have to sell tickets at the end of the day as well. And even though they still had a lot of their fans, they lost a lot of fans in the midst of these last 3 seasons because of some of these decisions that you're talking about and that you speak of, and especially a lot of black fans. So now what you do, you actually sell more tickets now because you have a fan base. Of course, you had David Culley last year, but he's not going to get the same respectability as Lovie Smith. So what you do, instead of hiring a guy like Josh McCown, who that would really look like a move where you're just overlooking a lot of qualified black candidates. And, of course, Lovie Smith was not even on their radar to probably even be on the team, as a defense coordinator. But what the Texans realized is, I don't know if they got word from the NFL or they just made the astute decision and they got out of their our way or no way or our way or the highway type of mode, and they just did what they knew was right for their franchise.
I think you said it right there. I think
that's
important to
self-sabotage
mention.
now.
Like, letting go of your ideals and what you think is a way of doing it, and then thinking outside the box and looking at a different way, because I do believe that they wanted to keep Lovie Smith on the staff regardless of who they hired as their head coach, and that's why he wasn't dismissed, and that's why they kept him around. And then when they got to this point and they realized, hey, maybe we are being a little too crazy, we are jumping the gun. It's not like anybody else is going to hire Josh McCown out from under us. Maybe the guy that we need is right here in the building all along. If we're not wanting to move on from him because we want him on the staff, maybe there's a reason for that. He's already the associate head coach. He's doing a lot of head coaching duties when David Culley was in town. Let's go ahead and make him the head coach. Now they're one of 2 teams
with black head coaches. So you see how quickly the narrative changed?
With a big white beard, man, that I love. I love the big white beard.
I didn't realize he was just 63 years old. I thought he was older than 63.
He's in great shape.
So he's in great shape, and he's in great shape. So
but
again,
it's also important.
It's a PR move, and at the same time, you hire somebody who's qualified. So it's not like you can say, okay, well, they just hired him. It's Lovie Smith, a guy who has a tremendous track record.
It's a guy who's hiring his own coaches. David Culley come in here, and they told him who his offensive coordinator was going to be. They still had, half the coaching staff from when Bill O'Brien was here. It didn't make any sense. Now you've got Lovie Smith coming in. What do head coaches do whenever they're hired? They bring in their own staff. They hire their guys. That's what Lovie's doing, and that alone brings comfort and joy to Texans fans like me, because now I feel like we're going to get an opportunity to see the players start to grow. I feel like between Pep Hamilton and Lovie, they get it. Like, you have to put these players in position to have success. You cannot just put these guys into it.
This past season.
Oh, definitely, and that was the Lovie side of the ball.
Right.
But you can't just put anybody in this cookie cutter system where it doesn't matter who it is. You plug and play Wes Welker for Julian Edelman. That stuff doesn't exist outside of New England. Okay, you can't just have this offense that you run. You take out DeAndre Hopkins, you put in this guy, you put in X, you put in Nico Collins, you put in Brandon Cooks, and it works. No, you're going to have some success. You could tell you look at Brandon Cook's stats. Obviously he was able to light it up in some games, but you're not going to win football games that way. Now that they're changing the offense, they're changing things, you start to feel like you're going to see this football team possibly start to win some games because they're going to start doing something where instead of trying to force their guys to fit their system, now all of a sudden maybe their system might start to fit the guys that they have.
And Love is going to command respect. And, again, he has the pedigree. So, and then as far as free agent, and you never know, he may be able to get Deshaun Watson to change his mind and want to stay. Now, do the Texans want to do a full rebuild and get as much as they can for Deshaun Watson and really rebuild that roster? Because, of course, the Texans, I mean, Lovie Smith, no matter what kind of pedigree he has, he's the coach, and he can't go out there and play. So the Texans still need to fill some holes as far as talent is concerned. They still need to upgrade that roster as far as
just think
talent-wise.
about
But I
this.
think that was I thought that was a good move.
You add Deshaun Watson into the mix, and you think about all the turnovers that defense was able to create and how often they didn't result in points, or whenever that turnover would give the offense the ball inside enemy territory, they would only be able to come away with 3, which was pretty much a given, instead of converting those into touchdowns. You put Deshaun Watson in the mix, all of a sudden you're getting touchdowns off of those turnovers that are happening where now you've still got a long field. Maybe you stop a team in the red zone by getting a red zone turnover. You have a long field. Deshaun Watson's still going to turn some of those into touchdowns and into points, where you felt like a lot of times that defense of the Texans, as good as they were, they knew the offense wasn't even going to get a first down. And it was demoralizing for them, and that's why you saw a lot of times the Texans were getting blown out, because the defense would just pack it in. And how could you not, if you know your offense cannot score the football, or even get a first down? They're pissing in the wind, as I call it, man. And there was nothing they could do about it. That's going to change, or at least they're taking the steps toward changing that. That's not going to be the issue here in Houston any longer.
I agree. And before we move on, I still think David Culley, he did a good job in his first year at the helm, given everything, all the circumstances that he had to deal with as far as the Deshaun Watson fiasco. And things should play out in the upcoming future. I think before March 17th, we should know more about his legal proceedings and things of that sort. So there may be some moves and some kind of willings and dealings within the next few weeks as far as the Texans and as far as Deshaun Watson. So we'll know more. We'll have more clarity, I think, in the upcoming weeks about where he stands as far as his legal proceedings and things of that sort, and maybe where the Texans, how they're thinking about doing things moving forward.
But David Culley, I still thought
from what he was given, I mean, I thought he did. I mean, they won 4 games, a depleted roster.
It was just clear, Greg, that he wasn't
each week.
Culley wasn't head coach material.
I don't want to act like he was just terrible.
He didn't do a terrible job. I mean, they hired a guy who really wasn't qualified to be a head coach and never been a coordinator before, and he went in there and did his best, and he did just as good as the Texans did the year before. Which, I mean, you got to give him credit. He beat expectations. Yeah. But I think you can't ignore the fact that he made way too many mistakes, that it was really evident early on in the season as well that, there's a reason why David Culley had only gone as high as position coach and was not, maybe he could have been a coordinator had he gotten there, but he hadn't taken the right steps or hadn't grown enough to be given a head coaching position in the NFL, and the Texans gave him that.
Yeah, I thought he did pretty good, though. I mean, I know he definitely made some mistakes, and not to get in this David Culley tangent, rant, because we've already talked about this ad nauseum. But, again, given the circumstances, and he did make some glaring mistakes, same as Mike McCarthy and same as other coaches. I think David Culley's was highlighted more, I honestly feel, because he's a black coach. Now, of course, he wasn't a coordinator and things like that, but I thought he would have learned. I thought he would have learned from those mistakes.
Whenever you're declining a penalty on 3rd down to go ahead and punt on 4th down, it don't matter if you're black, blue, or green.
Mike McCarthy has done.
They are going to crucify your ass.
Different than what Mike McCarthy has done. But no, I like the Lovie Smith hire. You heard me a few weeks ago, and I said we'll see what the Texans decide to do. Of course, again, I think a lot of this was a PR move, and the fact that the lawsuit from Brian Flores is ongoing at this point. I think that helped them make this decision because, they were all in on Josh McCown, a guy with no coaching experience. So we'll see what happens again. Hey, that's your team, the Texans.
And there's still a chance Josh McCown could end up in the building. The quarterback's coach
they may try to groom him.
Position hasn't been filled yet. Lovie may not want to be a head coach forever. He may be getting ready to retire.
If he doesn't succeed, and if he wants
and not
to
even if he doesn't
coaching,
succeed, even if they do have success, how long do you think he wants to do it? And I mean,
who knows?
McCown could work all the way up to coordinator position. Because
so we'll see.
Lovie
is excited about the situation.
If you listen to some of the interviews that Lovie's put out, Lovie is anticipating that this Texans offense has success and that Pep Hamilton's eventually going to be a head coach in this league, and that would be a big boost to not only the Texans as a franchise, but also just their perception around the league. Because then you look at, hey, look, here they are. They're making the hires. They're making the minority hires, and these minority hires are leading to other minority candidates getting interviewed and getting hired for other franchises. And that's what this is all about. That's what we want. And that's why this ultimately the Texans, however they got there, ultimately this was the best hire.
The fact of the matter is they got there, so I have to give them credit for that.
It was the best hire they could have.
I don't feel it was as genuine as one would like.
Hey,
the
it's
fact
not
of
a
the matter
sexy
is
hire,
they made the hire.
But whenever you hear the press conference and you hear Lovey speak, you understand all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh. There's a coach. The Texans have a head coach who knows what he's doing, who knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Texans have felt that way in a long time.
Well, the fact that it's Lovey Smith, I mean, that says a lot. A guy that brings a lot of respectability. He's going to hold people accountable. And again, you may be able to lure some free agents to come play in Houston, which is a great city. So I think they got the right guy at the helm, and we'll see what happens from here. But let's move on to some NBA, man. Let's move to some NBA. The James Harden finally worked his way out of Brooklyn, who's been in a just windfall. They just fell off a cliff, and Kyrie Irving still not vaccinated. I still think they had a lot to do with James Harden's attitude. And you know what else I heard, Eddie? I heard that, I don't know how true it is, I heard that Kyrie Irving used to give James Harden the business one-on-one in practice, and that relationship snowballed after that because Kyrie Irving called James Harden washed up. So I don't know how true that is, but the fact that James Harden went there thinking he was going to play with KD and Kyrie, of course, KD is injured right now. He's on the mend. He'll be back after the All-Star break at some point. But again, James Harden did not feel like he was going to be the guy that they depended on to carry the show. And maybe that's a knock against James Harden, but I think the fact that Kyrie is not vaccinated and him going to Brooklyn thinking they were going to vie for a championship, and I don't think James Harden saw that happening with the vaccination status of Kyrie Irving, and that's a story for another day right there. But James Harden forced his way out of Brooklyn. Ben Simmons forced his way out of Philadelphia. What do you think about that trade? Let's go from team by team. What do you think? How do you think it helps the Nets?
I think it helps the Nets because the sooner you went ahead and break up that triumvirate of Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving, we all knew, from the get-go that it probably wasn't going to work. Yeah, the talent was there, but I think it was becoming evident throughout the whole process when you couldn't even get all three of them on the court to play together, really. That it just wasn't going to work. You knew at some point that the trade demands were going to come, from somewhere. I think James Harden recognized that, Philadelphia needed to move on from Ben Simmons. They needed to get him traded. That was an asset that was going to make a James Harden trade work. And if there's anywhere he wanted to go, it would be Philadelphia. Is where he said he wanted to go all along to reunite with Daryl Morey, where now all of a sudden Daryl Morey has, the dream, court that he's always wanted. Yeah. He's always tried to create that luxurious ball handler and prolific scorer with the big man underneath, and not just a big man that's tied to the rim, but a big man that can stretch the floor and can also do some things offensively himself. We've seen him try to put it together with T-Mac and Yao, and then with Harden and Capella. Now he has Joel Embiid, you could easily say is the number one center in the game when healthy. He's up there with, in the top tier of guys, and now James Harden has that guy to work with. To me, I mean, if James Harden can stay healthy, the hamstring doesn't bother him, and Embiid, we all know his health is always an issue.
Right.
But I think they really do have a great team there. They added, they bring in Paul Millsap as well. That's a tough, rugged guy. That's good to have on your squad when you're in the playoffs.
He's on the downside of his
career,
he is
on the downside, but he's a nice piece to add, for a team that's looking to make a playoff run. Those guys are invaluable. The Iguodalas, the Vince Carters, those type of guys that can come in. Who's another guy that's just an aged role player that can kind of work as a mercenary. I think Millsap's that type of guy. He's going to hit his free throws as well. Philly, they're in a great spot. James Harden now, you have to think that if he doesn't win a championship in Philadelphia, he's going to be Charles
Well, here's
Barkley.
the
You know,
thing.
he's going to be the guy that never won a
And Barkley
championship.
said he's definitely healthy now that he's out of Brooklyn. Now let's see how quick that hamstring. Of course, he's going to be out until after the All-Star game. But that's the thing right there as far as if you're speaking of Philly real quick, that's the thing right there. Can James Harden stay healthy? Is he still the same player that he was a few years ago? Now, of course, you know his game was we know he's a tremendous playmaker. So you're going to have that 1-2 punch with Joel Embiid, a dominant center, and a point guard. Now Tyrese Maxey can go back to doing what he does. He doesn't have to be ball dominant and really be that playmaker. Even though he can be a playmaker, he can concentrate more on scoring. Tobias Harris can concentrate more on scoring. Now you have Joel Embiid and James Harden. Of course, you know what they can do in the pick and roll. And Embiid can pick and pop now. And of course, you have to, if you're going to be aggressive on James Harden in the pick and roll because of his scoring ability, then that's going to leave other players open. That's going to leave Joel Embiid open to roll to the basket. He's going to be able to get lobs and things of that sort. The only thing I worry about with Philadelphia, I don't know about their depth. Of course, they lost Seth Curry. So I don't know about their depth. But as far as those four players, Tyrese Maxey, you got Thibault as well, but you have James Harden, who now, of course, he should be happy, so his attitude should be good. So we'll see if he still has that first step. We know he's put up some numbers at certain points of this season. Now, how consistent can he be? Of course, the referees are calling games different now. So is he going to be able to get to the foul line as often as he used to, just driving to the basket and just welling his arms and just really selling the fact that he's gotten fouled?
Well, think about this, Greg. Whenever he was in Houston, I think that was such a big part of his game, not just because, he was sort of, stretching the limits of the game in that capacity, which no player had before, but also because when the Rockets had a center like Clint Capella, you knew that he was tied to the rim, that he wasn't going to get outside. You didn't have to guard him outside of the paint. And that led to a very clogged lane that James Harden had to hammer himself into game after game after game for the Houston Rockets. And that led to him being, the most fouled player in the league and taking the most foul shots. I know James Harden took a lot of flack for his style of play, but I think it was important to note that, defenses, they plugged the paint because they knew James Harden was coming in there. It was as much on the defense as it was on James that those fouls were being called. And then now with Joel Embiid, you're not going to be able to play that style of defense against James Harden anymore. He may not have to rely on being fouled as much as just getting to the cup and then forcing them to open up things or to come off of Embiid.
But it's definitely going to open up things. That's my point. It's definitely going to open up things for other players because he's a dynamic playmaker. The guy averages over 9 assists per game. So with him handling the ball, it definitely gives Philly that other superstar opposite Joel Embiid. The only other legitimate scorer that they've had is Jimmy Butler. On the perimeter is Jimmy Butler back in 2018, 2019. Now you have James Harden who's going to run the point. Again, he's going to put everyone in their natural position, but that's a guy that can go out and get you 30 or 40 at any given moment. So it's going to give you that inside-outside game, definitely. And then the thing with Joel Embiid as well, not only is he a dominant center who can do those things in the low post, but he can also stretch the floor as well. He can also initiate the offense as well. So you have two legitimate superstars now. Again, do they have the necessary depth to compete in the playoffs when things get tight, when James Harden has to go out of the game? Of course, you're going to have to rely on Tyrese Maxey more in a situation like that. But my question with Philly is, do they have the necessary depth? Because we know Joel Embiid is playing at an MVP level. He's the most dominant player in basketball right now, what he can do. So we can definitely see those guys competing in the East. Of course, as far as Brooklyn is concerned.
Quick, before you move on, you might be right about you might be right about that with Philly. About what did you just say? I lost my train of thought.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, about him being the only other about their depth. Yeah. You may be right about their depth, but I think it's important to note that now that you've got your superstar in place in James Harden, you got your 1-2 punch with him and Joel Embiid. Once you've got those guys in house, I think we've seen here in Houston that Daryl Morey has been a wizard at being able to find the pieces and make the moves necessary to get the right pieces in to go with these guys. He was so good at doing that in Houston, knowing how to go out and get a Dwight Howard, how to go and get an Eric Gordon, how to go and get a Chris Paul, how to go and get these other players and add them to the mix here. Now that he's got Harden in the building, he's got Joel Embiid, I think you're going to be able to see Daryl Morey sit back and work his magic and put a team around these guys, just like he was able to do here in Houston. He just couldn't find that piece down low, that big man. I mean, Capella was good, but having that all-encompassing offensive and defensive big man, I think that was the one thing missing from Houston, and is what kept them from winning a title.
Right. And as far as Brooklyn is concerned, Brooklyn, of course, Ben Simmons. Now he's made his way out of Philadelphia. I don't know where he's going to play, but I hope his mental stability is good right now. But the thing with Brooklyn, he's surrounded by shooters in Kyrie and Kevin Durant, so he's a guy that can play his role, play on the defensive end. And I also like what Brooklyn got as far as Seth Curry, as far as Andre Drummond. I mean, that looks good. And, of course, Ben Simmons is going to be able to play like Ben Simmons, where he's not going to have to rely on scoring the basketball. So he's a guy that's going to deliver the ball to Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and do his thing. And speaking of Chris Paul real quick before we get out of here, again, next week, we're going to dive early and often. We're going to open up with basketball, even college basketball. Chet Holmgren is the #1 pick, folks. I'm letting you know right now, Eddie Cox. Chet Holmgren is the #1 pick. But we'll talk about that next week as well. Phoenix Suns rolling right now. Chris Paul, those guys looking like the best team in the NBA right now, even though I'm still rolling with Golden State. The Draymond injury kind of concerns me. He's still on the mend with that back injury. Golden State hasn't been looking as good with that back injury of Draymond. As far as on the defensive end, he's going to bring that back. He's going to bring that energy back on the defensive side of the ball. Celtics are playing good right now. They're playing more consistent. We're going to talk about them. They've won like 7 or 8 in a row. They're clicking on all cylinders now. Now they're healthy. They have an identity. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they're clicking. The addition of Derek White. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, the Bucks are not playing like the Bucks right now. But, hey, the Grizzlies are still the Grizzlies. The Bulls, what DeMar DeRozan is doing right now, oh, man, off the chain. But what concerns me is Zach LaVine's knee that knee that he had surgery on. Hey, but we'll talk more about it next week.
Should have traded him when they had the chance.
Yeah. I mean, the Raptors are looking good. Hey, we're going to talk a lot of NBA next week, so get ready for that. Again, the Sports Court, the show that keeps it 100% of the time. I'm Greg. That's Eddie to my left. Legends live and let live.
Later.